You know, there are moments when life feels like it's standing perfectly still, and somehow that's even worse than chaos. That's exactly where I was when everything started. I was 21 years old when I married Evan. He was 25, my childhood crush. My one and only. The boy next door who had unknowingly held my heart for most of my awkward teenage years. It's almost funny now, thinking back how every glance he threw my way felt like it carried the weight of the universe. And when we reconnected years later at that crowded little bar downtown, it felt like destiny tapping me on the shoulder. Evan was charming. Older, established, he had the kind of steady presence that made me feel safe, seemed like maybe finally the world was starting to make sense. When he asked me out, I felt like all those years of pining had been worth it. 6 months later, when he slipped a ring on my finger, I honestly thought I'd won the lottery of life. We married young right before my senior year of college. It was a small, intimate ceremony, nothing flashy, just us, our families, a handful of friends, and the kind of joy you can't fake for photos. At least that's what I thought back then. For a while, life was good. We built a comfortable home together. I graduated, started working. We dreamed about building a big family, filling our home with laughter and little feet running down the hallway. It was Evan's idea to start trying for a baby right after my graduation. And honestly, I was excited too. Nervous, sure, but I loved the idea of growing our family, of creating something together that was wholly ours. We tried and tried and tried. At first, it was fun, a secret adventure we shared between late night giggles and whispered dreams about nurseries and baby names. But months passed, negative test after negative test, and the laughter started fading, replaced by this cold, creeping dread that neither of us dared to name out loud. I suggested we see a doctor. When 6 months had passed, Evan brushed me off with that confident smile of his, the one that used to make me melt. "It just takes time," he said. "Some people try for years, we're fine, but I wasn't fine. I could feel something unraveling inside me, a thread slowly pulling loose when I couldn't seem to grab hold of." Another 3 months passed. By then, every tiny argument exploded into a war. Tension hung heavy between us, thick and suffocating. I begged Evan again to see a specialist. He refused. Instead, he told me with a patience that felt more like pity, that maybe my stress was the real problem, that if I just relaxed, it would happen. It hurt more than I can put into words, but I wanted to believe him. I wanted us to work. So when he suggested I quit my job just until we got pregnant, I agreed. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself a lot of things because the truth was too painful to face. The truth came anyway. After countless tests, countless waiting rooms with uncomfortable chairs and stale coffee, the verdict was handed down like a life sentence. I could never have Evan's biological children. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't his fault. It was just one of those cruel, senseless facts of biology, but Evan didn't see it that way. Not really, not deep down. He pulled away from me physically, emotionally, every way that mattered. He started sleeping in the guest room, stopped making eye contact, stopped touching me, laughing with me, living life beside me. I became a ghost, haunting my own marriage, walking on eggshells, holding my breath in my own home. He blamed me not in words, but in sighs, in silences, in the way he wouldn't look at the photos from our wedding anymore. And God help me, I blamed myself too. I told myself if I'd just done something differently, eaten healthier, prayed harder, been better, maybe we wouldn't be here, maybe he wouldn't hate me, maybe I wouldn't hate myself. I should have seen the writing on the wall back then, should have packed my bags, signed the papers, and saved what was left of my dignity, but I loved him. God, I loved him so much it hurt to breathe. So I stayed. And slowly, piece by piece, I shattered. You always think you'll recognize the moment when your life falls apart. Like there will be a loud crash, some kind of cosmic signal telling you, this is it, brace yourself. But for me, it wasn't like that. It was quiet, sneaky, a slow unraveling. I didn't even notice until I was standing in the ruins, wondering how I'd gotten there. After months of barely speaking, Evan and I agreed to start counseling. I thought maybe, just maybe if we could find our way back to each other, we could rebuild. We sat through endless therapy sessions, peeling back layers of resentment and hurt like old wallpaper in a crumbling house. There were days when it felt like progress. He'd smile at me and I'd think, there he is. There's the man I married. And there were days when he'd sit there, arms crossed, face blank, and I'd wonder if I even knew him at all anymore. Still, I fought for us. I fought because the alternative, letting go, felt like falling off a cliff. Things got better, not perfect, not like before, but better. We found a new rhythm. We stopped talking about kids for now. The therapist had said and focused on just being together again. I picked up a new job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me something to focus on besides the ache in my chest. Evan seemed lighter, freer, I thought it was because we were healing, because we were winning. But sometimes when something seems too good to be true, it's because it is. The world shifted again when COVID hit, everything slowed down. We were stuck at home together, two people who had spent years pretending everything was fine, now trapped in the same four walls, and that's when Evan disappeared. One Tuesday afternoon, he kissed my forehead, said he was going to grab groceries, and walked out the door. I never saw him again. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. I was annoyed, thinking Evan forgot his key again. I swung the door open, ready to scold him, but it wasn't Evan standing there. It was a little boy, no older than 2. He had messy brown curls and a tiny blue water bottle clutched in his fist, and in his other hand, a letter addressed to me. My hands shook as I tore it open. I recognized Evan's handwriting immediately. The words blurred in front of my eyes as I read them. He had been having an affair. Started around the time we were struggling to conceive. At first, it was just physical, but when he found out I couldn't give him children, something inside him snapped. His mistress got pregnant, and in his twisted mind, it was a sign from the universe. He decided to leave. Not just me, but the child too, because apparently raising 2 kids with 2 women was too much for him to handle. So he left the boy, his son, on my doorstep, like a package he couldn't be bothered to deliver properly. The little boy Liam looked up at me with these wide, trusting eyes, like he was waiting for me to tell him what came next. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not the way it had broken before, not the slow erosion of heartbreak and disappointment. This was different. Sharper, cleaner. I should have hated Liam. Should have seen him as a living, breathing reminder of my husband's betrayal. But all I saw was a scared, abandoned child and innocent, and I couldn't turn my back on him. Not when I knew exactly what it felt like to be unwanted. I pulled him inside, locked the door, sat down on the floor with him in my lap, both of us stunned and silent. When he offered me his little water bottle like he was trying to comfort me, I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Great racking sobs that shook my whole body. And Liam just patted my hair clumsily like he was telling me, "It's okay, we'll figure it out." I didn't have time to process everything. Didn't have time to grieve because now I had a tiny human depending on me. For the first few nights we barely slept, I'd jolt awake every time he stirred, terrified he'd disappear too. Terrified that if I closed my eyes, the universe would take him away, like it had taken everything else I tried. Reaching out to Evan, called, texted, emailed. No response. It was like he had vanished from the earth, taking every last shred of decency with him. I even contacted his old office, desperate for any information, but they hadn't seen or heard from him either. It was just me and Liam now, against the world. And I had no idea what I was doing. But somewhere deep inside, past the fear, past the rage, past the heartbreak, a tiny voice whispered, "You are not alone anymore." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you hit rock bottom. Nothing feels stable anymore, but somehow you realize you're still breathing, still standing. And maybe that's enough. The first few weeks with Liam were a blur of exhaustion and quiet panic. I didn't know how to be a mother. I didn't even know how to feel like a mother. But every morning when I opened my eyes and saw him curled up beside me, clutching his little dinosaur blanket, I knew I had to try. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I was just keeping him safe until I could figure out where he really belonged. Maybe Evan's family would step up. Maybe someone, anyone, would come claim this tiny boy who had been left like forgotten luggage at my door. But days turned into weeks turned into months, and no one came. Every night, Liam would crawl into my lap with a battered picture book or a crayon drawing he made just for me. Every morning, he'd run to the window to look for the garbage truck because for some reason, that was the most exciting thing in his little world. He started calling me Mama without me ever asking him to, and I didn't correct him because somewhere between the sleepless nights and spilled cereal and messy hugs, Liam had carved a space into my heart that no one else could ever fill. I still tried to do the responsible thing. I hired a lawyer, started the process of tracking down Evan's mistress, the boy's biological mother, hoping maybe deep down that she would want him back. That maybe there was a family out there for him, even if it wasn't me. But it was like chasing ghosts. Every lead dead-ended, every inquiry brought nothing but silence. It didn't take long for the lawyer to sit me down, his voice gentle but firm, and tell me the truth. "You're his mother now if you want to be." The thought terrified me. I wasn't ready. I wasn't enough. I was just a broken woman who could barely keep herself together, let alone raise a child. But when I looked at Liam, really looked at him, I realized something important. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to show up every single day, no matter how messy or scared or tired I was. So I did. I filed for adoption. The legal process moved faster than I expected, thanks to Evan's abandonment and the note he had left behind. The judge didn't even hesitate. And just like that, in a sterile courtroom with flickering fluorescent lights, Liam became mine, officially, legally, forever. But truth be told, he had been mine from the moment he handed me that little blue water bottle and patted my head like he was the adult and I was the one who needed saving. He saved me long before I ever saved him. Life with Liam wasn't easy. There were tantrums, there were tears. There were nights when I cried into my pillow because I missed the version of my life I thought I'd have the life with Evan. The babies we never made, the dreams we had built on a foundation of sand. But there were also firsts. First time Liam said, "I love you," unprompted. First time he tied his own shoelaces after a week of messy attempts. First time he came home from preschool with a gold star sticker and held it out to me like he was giving me the moon. Those moments stitched me back together in ways I didn't even realize I needed. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. I started making new friends, real friends, not just the ones who had picked sides when Evan left. I found a better job, one that paid well enough to let us move into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony big enough for a potted tomato plant that Liam insisted on watering every morning. And little by little, the ache in my chest dulled. The fear faded. The anger lost its sharpness. We built a life together. Not the one I had planned, but the one I needed. I didn't think about Evan anymore. He was a ghost. A bad memory locked away in a drawer I didn't feel like opening. Liam and I, we were enough. We were whole. Or at least we were trying to be. Healing doesn't look the way I thought it would. It's not neat or linear. It's messy and slow, and sometimes it feels like you're moving backwards, even when you're doing everything right. For a long time, I thought healing would mean forgetting Evan, forgetting the betrayal, forgetting the girl I used to be before everything burned down around me. But the truth is, healing looked a lot more like this. Standing in the kitchen barefoot, wearing mismatched pajamas, laughing so hard I snorted when Liam tried to make pancakes by himself and somehow ended up with batter on the ceiling. It looked like sitting on the living room floor, helping him glue glitter onto homemade Christmas cards. Even though I'd be finding sparkles in my carpet for months, it looked like learning to love the life I had, not the life I lost. Liam thrived. He made friends at school. He grew taller, funnier, more confident with every passing day. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waking up with that tight ball of anxiety in my chest. We were good, really good, until the knock on the door. It was a crisp Wednesday afternoon, the kind of day where everything feels so normal that you forget for just a little while that bad things can still happen. When I opened the door and saw Evan standing there, it was like the air got sucked out of my lungs. He looked older, worn down. Not the boyish man I had married, but a hollow, broken version of him. I should have slammed the door in his face. Should have told him to get lost without even listening, but I froze, and Evan being Evan took that as an invitation. He stepped inside like he still had a right to be there, like he hadn't shattered our lives into 1,000 jagged pieces, and walked away without looking back. He said he wanted to see his son, take him back, start over. I laughed. I actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. I told him he didn't have a son anymore, that he had signed away that right the moment he abandoned Liam, like unwanted baggage. But he didn't back down. He begged, cried, told me some pathetic story about how karma had caught up with him, how his new wife, the mistress, had left him, how he had another son but had lost custody because of his own reckless, selfish choices. He wanted Liam back because Liam was all he had left, not because he loved him, not because he missed him, but because he needed to fill a hole in his own broken, miserable life. And standing there listening to his sob story, something inside me crystallized. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I was done. Done letting this man hurt me. Done letting him have any power over my life. Done believing that I owed him even a sliver of my heart, my time, my compassion. I told him to get out, told him if he ever came near me or Liam again, I would not hesitate to call the police. I wasn't bluffing. I had already spoken to my lawyer, already started the paperwork for a restraining order, because the truth is, healing isn't just about moving on. It's about protecting what you've rebuilt, and I would burn the whole damn world down before I let Evan hurt my son. My son, not his. Liam was mine. In every way that mattered, Evan might have shared his DNA, but he had given up every single right to call himself a father the day he walked away. I slammed the door behind him, locked it, leaned against it with shaking hands, and then for the first time in years, I let myself feel proud. Proud that I had survived. Proud that I had fought. Proud that I had built a life worth protecting. Liam and I, we were safe. And no one was going to take that away from us. Sometimes starting over doesn't look like a grand gesture. It doesn't look like packing your bags and moving to a new city or quitting your job to travel the world. Sometimes starting over looks like Saturday mornings making pancakes in a too small kitchen with a 6-year-old boy giggling as he tries to flip them without splattering batter everywhere. Sometimes it's quieter, smaller, sweeter after Evan left for good. This time, things slowly began to settle again. The nights weren't filled with fear anymore. I didn't jump every time the doorbell rang. Liam went back to being his bubbly, bright self. He talked nonstop about dinosaurs and outer space and how he was going to be an astronaut when he grew up, or maybe a zookeeper depending on the day. I found myself laughing more too, real belly-deep laughs that I hadn't heard from my own mouth in a long time. We started new traditions, Friday movie nights, complete with popcorn and pillow forts, Sunday trips to the park where Liam would race me to the swings and insist he could push higher than the sky, bedtime stories where he would make up the endings because apparently dragons deserve happy endings too. Life wasn't perfect, it was never going to be, but it was ours. I even started dreaming again cautiously at first, like testing ice with the tip of your toe. Dreams about maybe going back to school, finishing the degree I'd put on hold. Dreams about buying a small house with a backyard big enough for Liam to run wild in dreams. About letting myself hope for more. One night after Liam had finally fallen asleep, curled up with his favorite stuffed dinosaur, a soft snore escaping his little nose, I sat on the couch and let myself really feel it. The weight of everything we had survived, the enormity of everything we had built together. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love meant sacrificing everything, even yourself, just to make someone else happy. The one who thought staying was braver than leaving. The one who measured her worth by whether or not she could give someone else what they wanted. I'm not her anymore. I'm someone new, someone stronger, someone who knows that love isn't about giving until there's nothing left. It's about choosing every day to show up for yourself, for the people who matter. I looked around our tiny living room, the crayon drawings taped to the fridge, the sneakers tossed by the door, the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, and I realized this is what healing looks like. Messy, beautiful, unfinished, just like us. A few days ago, Liam and I planted a tomato seed in an old coffee can. He checks it every morning, dragging me by the hand to the windowsill, eager to see if anything has sprouted yet. It hasn't, not yet, but I told him to be patient. Sometimes the best things take time. He grinned up at me with that gap-toothed smile of his, the one that makes my heart feel too big for my chest. And he said, "It's okay, Mama. It's growing. We just can't see it yet." Maybe he was talking about the tomato plant, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was talking about us, because that's the thing about healing, about rebuilding, about starting over. It doesn't always look like you expect it to. It doesn't always happen on your timeline. It doesn't always come easy, but it does come, and when it does, it's beautiful. So here we are, a little family stitched together by heartbreak and hope, laughter, and late-night lullabies, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. If you were me, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door to a scared little boy and let him rewrite your story? Would you have fought for him the way I did? Would you have let yourself believe in second chances, not just for him, but for yourself too? I wonder sometimes, and I'd love to hear what you think. Because maybe, just maybe, the best stories are the ones we don't see coming.